Okay, picture this. The year is 1907, and the entire American financial system is about to just shatter. There's no Federal Reserve, no safety net, absolutely nothing. Just pure chaos. And right in the middle of it all, one man decides the economy is not going to fail on his watch. So, who is this man, and how in the world did he pull the country back from the brink? Let's dive in. And just like that, the dominoes started to fall fast. One bank would shut its doors, and that fear would just spread like wildfire to the next. With the banks going under, credit just froze. Businesses couldn't make payroll, they couldn't buy supplies. The whole engine of the economy was just seizing up. Yeah, this wasn't some Wall Street problem anymore. This was a full-blown national crisis, and it was threatening to drag the entire country into a catastrophic depression. So, what was actually happening here? How could things spiral out of control so darn quickly? Well, it all comes down to one of the most powerful and, frankly, destructive forces in our nature: fear. It's a terrifyingly simple feedback loop, right? Fear makes people pull their money out. But here's the thing: a bank doesn't keep all its cash locked in a vault, it lends it out. So when too many people ask for their deposits back at the same time, the bank literally runs out of money. It fails. And 1907, well, it was the perfect storm. It all kicked off with a risky investment scheme that went bust, and that sparked the initial fear. But the real problem was much deeper. Banks had lent out way too much money, and when trust in the system just vanished, there was no central authority, no lender of last resort to step in and calm things down. So, with no government institution able to stop the bleeding, the entire country, kind of turns its eyes to a single private citizen, a man whose power wasn't granted by any election, but was earned in the world of high finance. J.P. Morgan, he wasn't the president, he wasn't the Treasury Secretary. His authority came from something else entirely: his name, his reputation, and the simple fact that when he spoke, the financial world listened. In short, he was the trust that the system had lost. So what did he do? He didn't make some big speech. He didn't write a letter to the paper. Nope. He gathered the most powerful men in the country in his own private library on Madison Avenue and orchestrated one of the most audacious financial rescues in history. His method? It was direct and it was forceful. Some accounts say he literally locked the doors to his library. He told the presidents of the nation's biggest banks that nobody was leaving until they had a plan. And, more importantly, until they had committed their own money to fix it. The plan he forced them to agree on was incredibly decisive. Step 1, get all the key players in a room where they can't leave. Step 2, use his immense personal influence to hammer out an agreement. And Step 3, organize a massive injection of cash, a pool of money from the strong banks to save the weak ones and stop the panic dead in its tracks. And guess what? Morgan's plan worked. The panic subsided, but the whole crisis left this permanent mark on the country, and it revealed a fundamental weakness that absolutely had to be fixed. The Panic of 1907 was a huge wake-up call for the nation. The fact that the entire economy depended on one private banker was frankly terrifying to lawmakers. It showed that the country needed a permanent public institution to ensure financial stability. And just 6 years later, that is exactly what we got with the creation of the Federal Reserve. But this whole thing brings up a really fascinating debate about J.P. Morgan himself. Was he a hero who saved the country, or was he a symptom of a system that allowed one single man to become way too powerful? So on one hand, yeah, he's hailed for stepping in and single-handedly preventing a total collapse. But on the other hand, the very fact that he could do that was deeply unsettling. It raised this critical question for a democracy. Should any one private citizen really have that much control over the nation's fate? When you really boil it all down, the most important takeaway from this story isn't about finance or even one man's personal power. It's about that invisible foundation our whole economy is built on. Morgan understood this better than anybody. He knew the problem wasn't a true lack of money in the system. The problem was psychological. It was a crisis of confidence. His real genius was figuring out how to restore trust and stop the fear. See, a financial panic is something like 90% emotion and only 10% fundamentals. Once that fear takes over, logic just goes right out the window. Morgan's rescue wasn't just about injecting cash, it was about injecting confidence back into the system. And that's his really unique legacy, isn't it? We so often celebrate the builders, the innovators, the people who create these vast fortunes. But Morgan's most famous act wasn't building something new, it was holding the whole thing together right when it was about to crumble. Which leaves us with a pretty fascinating question for today. Back in 1907, the answer was one man. Today, we have institutions like the Federal Reserve. But as our financial world gets ever more complex and interconnected, it really makes you wonder, when the next big panic hits, where are we going to find our trust?